I saw a woman bringing her mom down from an apartment, and she carried her. She was a wheelchair, but she had to carry her down. She actually had a weightlifting belt on with a back brace. She had
Wow.
actually built up these amazing muscles. She was so strong, and she carried her down. And I saw her literally just lift her and put her into the car. If you fall down or get wedged in someplace there, your loved one or EMTs cannot get access because a lot of times your feet will be against the door.
Every year, more people are injured in their own homes than they are in car accidents. The most dangerous place for older adults isn't a highway, isn't behind the wheel, isn't going to their grocery store in inclement weather. It's being in their own home. Not because they're clumsy or careless, but because the spaces we live in and work in were never designed with accessibility in mind. They were built around an imaginary, perfect, abled person, not the bodies we actually live in. More than half of serious falls happen in places people assumed were safe enough. But the truth is unavoidable. The real danger isn't age, it's lack of accessibility. Welcome to the SwagAbility Show, everyone, where real life challenges meet practical tools, empowering stories and solutions that support your daily journey. I'm your host, Steve Wagstaff. From everything from health, education to assistive technology, and more. Our goal is to see you thrive wherever life finds you. My guest today is Greg Cantori. He's the founder of Little Deeds and is a accessibility expert. We're going to talk about what it looks like to have home accessibility, community accessibility, and some of the things he's involved in helping people to recognize some of the needs that they have in their own homes. Greg, appreciate you taking time out of your day or evening in Spain to spend a few minutes on the SwagAbility Show.
Fantastic to be here. So thanks for having me tonight or today.
Yeah, whatever
Okay.
works out for timing wise. Obviously, starting at the beginning, you're an able bodied individual as how the world would look at you. What inspired you, first of all, to get into this field? And you started Little Deeds. Why focus on home safety and accessibility from an able bodied person's perspective?
I normally would tell you the story, which is true, about my parents struggling with their homes as they got older and what we needed to do to make their homes safer as they got older and had various medical issues. But there's actually a common theme throughout my career that started way back when I was working with formerly homeless individuals. And they were coming off the street, reunited with their family. We were helping them with building houses. That's what our job was at Light Street Housing. So we were the housing provider. And we networked with a jobs provider and also a counseling organization. So jobs, housing, recovery is what we called the process: jobs, housing, and recovery. And what I realized is that whole process had an accessibility built into it as well. It was access to housing, it was access to services, and access back to reuniting with their families and bringing them back into the fold. Because a lot of times when you become homeless, you basically have really burned every bridge you had as part of that process, and that's a big challenge. So that was one of it. And then I moved on to working at a foundation where funded organizations like Light Street Housing to help people access services, and some of them were also organizations like the ARC, which works a great deal with people with different kinds of abilities, the Federation of the Blind, and organizations like Pathways and so on that also help people with substance abuse issues reconnect and so on. So we funded that, and all of that through there, it was always this idea that somebody's being blocked from getting something that they should have by right, that should be automatic, that why is it so difficult? And why does a nonprofit have to exist to make this happen? And so that has been in the back of my mind ever since I ran the last job before I semi-retired, which was Maryland Nonprofits, and where we helped nonprofits become better at what they do. And so in a way, it was like help them be better at helping others. So it's sort of like caring for the caregivers, in this case, the nonprofits.
Was it your philanthropy side to get involved in this, or was this your 9-to-5 career that was focusing on these things?
Both. It was both. I did a lot of volunteer work in addition to working with the nonprofits. I was a And when I had the opportunity to run a foundation, when I was asked to come, and it was a large family foundation, had about $70 million, and they wanted to make sure that the money was given away well. That's when I said, this would be really exciting to see what we could do with this. What a privilege to be given basically $2.5–3 million a year to spend. It wasn't all my decision, it was their decision, but I was the one orchestrating the effort. What a privilege to be able to do that, and to learn and hear the stories of the nonprofits that we funded, to hear the challenges that they had, sometimes to give them pieces of advice that we may have learned from another organization they didn't know about. What a privilege. Just amazing. That was an amazing 12-year run, being able to do that. I pinch myself. I say, how did I get so lucky?
You're the envy of SwagAbility right now, because that's our end goal, is to be able to get where you were, and Lord willing, we'll get there. But yeah, very interesting. And is that where Little Deeds, kind of the springboard start for that, or was Little Deeds something that was already in place?
It was noodling about in the back of my head. And then when my dad had some health issues, and then my mom as well, that brought it home, basically. So what we discovered was that, she was upstairs, it was a 2-story house, and she no longer could navigate the stairs safely. So she stayed downstairs. We converted a parlor room into a bedroom, converted a closet into a shower, and added grab bars into what was the guest bathroom. So that became her primary bathroom. And then we did things like eliminate thresholds, doorways, issues, and all kinds. And I was doing this without any real knowledge. It was just like fumbling along. And that's where Little Deeds became, so, something, this needs to be done professionally. There needs to be a service like this that's easy to access, that knows the process and knows the grant funding, knows where to get the money to get the work done, as well as actually doing the work. So we were kind of unique, because there's a lot of handyman out there that will do the work, but you're not going to ask them and say, hey, do you know about grant funding? They're not going to know that.
What was Little Deeds known for? What was its main role when you?
It was a quasi for-profit. So we for the 8 years that we ran Little Deeds, we plowed our profits back into helping those who could not afford our services. So that's what we did. And so that we were known for basically being the first one to call when you were at wit's end. Like, how am I going to do this? A lot of social workers would call us because they had clients that, I can't find funding for this. We got to get a ramp in here. I can't afford the $9,000 for a ramp. And then we would get to work. So we would not only help find the funding, we would actually then do the installation and the follow up with them. So that's what we got to be known for, was that's the philanthropic side of our work. So we were philanthropic as well as, charging market rate for folks. And what an amazing, lucky business to have, to be able to every day get up and do this work with folks. Just amazing.
What about in terms of, I live accessibility every day, or someone with, we can call it differing abilities, because that's a conversation we had, as like the definition of a disability. Well, I think all of us in our lives go from differing abilities. You're born with a lot of inability to do things. You then are able to do some things, and then later in life so we're moving in and out of this disability or differing abilities. But for you, as able-bodied man, did you take any training, or did this start to come naturally to you, what an accessible house looked like, or what a bathroom needed to look like?
So interesting. So even before Light Street Housing, my very, very first job out of college, or actually in college while I was working there, was a bicycle mechanic.
Okay.
And one day a man walked in, and he had 2 wheels, and one in each hand. And he said, can you true these, which means straighten these up and make them stronger than they were before? I am a wheelchair racer. And I looked at him saying, but you walked in here. And he says, oh, well, I have 2 artificial legs. And I said, you walk so beautifully. I didn't even know that. And he was a Vietnam veteran, lost his legs in the war. And I did the wheels, became known very quickly as the go-to person for all the wheelchair racing, and also the wheelchair basketball playing as well. So the specialized wheelchairs on there, and I got to know these individuals personally, and they get to tell me their stories about where they came from, what they're doing, how they're adapting. And so that's probably my very first, real in getting to know what they
Sure.
might need. And it, so that I've been looking at the whole world through accessibility eyes now, and I think that was probably the first time, because now I started looking at things like, the usual things like thresholds and curb cuts on the streets and cracks in the pavement and, unmarked stairways and just on and on and on. And I think about that all the time, even through all my career. I was thinking about that. I said, wow, this would be really difficult for anybody else. But, now I can do it, but nobody else may be able to. And, it's interesting. We're talking to you from Spain right now. I'm in Spain.
Yeah.
And my whole family is bilingual except me. And I don't know if it's a mental block or something, but I have the greatest difficulty learning another language. So I wouldn't call it a disability, to say, but it's
Sure.
definitely a challenge to learn a new language. And, my brain just isn't wired for it. And so I'm very sensitive to the fact that, okay, here's something that I need assistance with.
It's a great way to think about it. Look at it. There's all abilities that the things we can't do, we're limited in some way. And it really is a mind shift as to what a disability is, or differing abilities. And so I applaud you for your work and your stick-to-itiveness, and for having eyes for, obviously for me, you're a perfect advocate, because you've spent time around individuals. You've got to know their stories, and that's a great start and a story for you to be with those wheelchair racers. Because if I'm not mistaken, not to rabbit trail too far, didn't you have a record of some sort, where whether it was land speed or whether on a bike, or there was some sort of record I read about? Tell us a
Yeah,
bit.
I think maybe that's the little seed that they planted in my head, was this idea of going really fast on wheels and
Yeah.
your own power. And yeah, so I have something called a velomobile, which is a fully enclosed bicycle, recumbent bicycle, where the pedals are up front. And I was able to reach 58.2 miles an hour at Battle Mountain, Nevada, where the World Human Powered Speed Championships take place. And I was able, my goal was to hit my age at the time, which was 58 years old. So I hit 58 miles an hour, which so was just, and for a three-wheeled vehicle in my age group, that was a new high. So that was it subsequently was broken almost the next year. So no record ever stands, but it was a real privilege to be out there with these other teams from around the world. And it's interesting you brought that up, because 2 world records were set for hand cycling, and they were fully enclosed hand cycles. And they used fully enclosed also with no windows. So there was no way to see outside except a screen and a little tiny camera. They're called camera bikes. And Karen from Canada, actually, she set the record at 49 miles an hour, just using her hands on the pedals. And so I got to watch her get taped inside these machines and watch her take off down the road to set that new world record. It was an amazing thing to see.
We're only, I think, limited by where our minds will allow us to go. That's why I think our tagline, thriving where life finds you. I'm not downplaying anyone's inability to do something, but if God's granted you a brain and he's granted you breath and you're here, there are things and productivity that you can do for the benefit of yourself, but also for the encouragement of other people. Just my, not feeling, it's just my understanding it and living it. And so that's my encouragement to anyone, is to find something you're passionate about, or get involved in something that is going to take you out of your comfort zone, because I think we've got a life that's got a certain amount of years to it. And to not take advantage of some of these things, I think we rob ourselves of those experiences. But I'll get off that soapbox for now.
It's a great soapbox, and there's a great article in the Atlantic right now called "The Outsiders," being an outsider, and the concept of that is being not just an outsider, but feeling like you don't belong, and it may be imposter syndrome, a bit of
Right.
imposter syndrome. And I've had that feeling throughout my career, sometimes thinking, why me? Why am I doing this? Why, and part of that is learning to be comfortable with being uncomfortable, and making that part of what what helps us in growth. And the thing is that there are so few people, unfortunately, that really push through, really push through, and they become our heroes, the ones that overcome incredible odds of XYZ. But so many of us have little heroes in us that we don't know about.
Yeah.
Until you try. That's the thing. You got to go out and give it a shot and try. And I think that's been something I've been very lucky to have the opportunity to do that, feeling like the imposter sometimes,
Yeah.
but doing it anyway, and being accepted by the folks that maybe I felt like I was the outsider, and I became more on the inside. It's been a real privilege.
Of the story. So after Little Deeds, tell me what you're involved in now, and where you're moving directionally. You have been the head of a number of nonprofit organizations, if I'm not mistaken. Can you tell us some about that work, and then tell us a little bit about what you're focusing on now and what you're passionate about?
So this is the meat of the discussion, because we talked about some practical tips and so on. One of my frustrations in running Little Deeds is that adapting a home has always been looked at as discretionary. It's something that you do for a lot of people because I'm older, or I've got a recent short-term or long-term disability that needs something to be adapted to. And I kept thinking there's something just doesn't feel right about that. Why aren't all homes accessible? And then it hit me in the head is that Ralph Nader had written this amazing book in the 1960s called Unsafe at Any Speed. His thought was, why are car crashes so common and people perishing so frequently?
Was he the seatbelt guy?
He's a seatbelt guy. He said, this is ridiculous for the cost of a very simple 3-point seatbelt that had been developed by Volvo. Volvo is the one who developed it. We should go ahead and just put these in all the cars, and a lot less people will die, and make it mandatory and make it standard. So it's not like saying, well, you're a bad driver, you're the one that needs a seatbelt. We don't do that, do we? That'd be very funny, wouldn't it? Saying, well, you don't need a seatbelt because you're a good driver, but you're a bad driver, you need a seatbelt. And that's exactly how we treat accessibility in our homes. It's like, you're at risk of falling, you need a grab bar. And so the idea came up, and Liz Lewinsky, who's working with us on this, and my son-in-law Emilio, we were the three musketeers of Little Deeds, came together and thought, let's create an association, a national association of grab bar installers. And the mantra on this is that there should be a grab bar in every shower and a handrail on every single step, without exception. Without exception. Exactly like cars. You don't say some cars get airbags and some don't. We don't say some cars get seatbelts and some don't. It's without exception. And the statistics bear that in mind. The fall rates are so high. The death rate from the falls are so high. And yet we're doing minuscule things about it. And the truth is that this is a universal issue. A marathon runner can come home from running 26 miles that day and put too much conditioner and go down and crack her head open because there's no grab bar. It's not, we don't say that based on ability. We say it needs to be safe for everyone. And when it becomes safe for everyone, it's better for everyone, because then, I'm looking at this as sort of the gateway drug of accessibility. Because if we can get the grab bars, get the handrails, then we can start talking about door widths, thresholds, no threshold entries, better lighting, automatic turn-off stoves, and all kinds of things for home safety.
Because the technology exists. I mean, the materials exist. And I think in some instances, when you're building brand new, I think you probably save up front because, I don't know the end prices, but you're making wider doors. I'm thinking less material for some things. So it makes so much sense that it's hard to believe that we're looking at houses where you've got split entries or that, because at some point in someone's life, that is going to become a problem, because no one wants to plan on going into. I don't plan on going into a facility. I don't know what the Lord's will is for my life, but I'd like to be at my home as long as I can. The way we build houses now is we're setting ourselves up for failure in the future, or at least not to be able to stay in the future.
Your own journey and what you've had to do with your own home, modifying your own home. So didn't come pre-modified. It shouldn't. We shouldn't even have to use the word modify. We don't go in and modify cars. We
Right.
don't say, this car didn't have a seatbelt. Let's go ahead and put one in, or let's add an airbag. We don't do that. But that's the insanity of what we do with our houses right now, is that we go in and say, well, we need to add that. And so, with your home, what are some of the things that you needed to do to your house to make it more accessible?
For me, it started obviously the first thing I think for anyone to make it practical is width. If if you're a chair user and you can't first of all get into the house, and maybe we should back up one more because you're not allowed to build a house at ground level because of flooding and all that. You need to have some sort of grade that's lower for drainage. It's getting into the house, so it's going to require some sort of curb or ramp to get up over that 8 inch or whatever the building law is. And then widths were a big thing. Who wants to get halfway down the hall, realize that I left something in the living room, but then have to either go all the way down to the end of the hall so they can turn around to go back that way or back up, especially in a power chair. So I think widths of things make a big difference. And then height of things make the simplest things that for someone that's able bodied, it's no less trouble for them to reach down 10 inches or 12 inches to turn a light switch off as it would be for us to try and find them at a higher level, especially if you don't have upper body strength. So those were things that we did. And then the bonuses were taking advantage of how far technology has come. So putting in smart switches. So my home is completely run by Google in terms of lights going on and off. If I transfer into bed and realize that I haven't turned off the bedroom light, rather than having to transfer back, turn the light off, things that people wouldn't think of. Our voices are now power. Assistive technology is everywhere, not just in houses, it's in clothing, it's in vehicles. So we live in an age where I believe there's everything is there we need. It's just the common sense of accepting that to be the new norm has not caught up with the times. That's my opinion anyway.
Yeah, and those are great modifications that probably some of those probably didn't cost too much. Some did, like the widening is one of the most expensive
Sure.
things you can do to a home. People may not understand that, is that when you need to widen a doorway, it's much more than just putting in a wider door. It's usually the structural part of the house, and then there's also light switches that have to be moved, which means an electrician has to come in, and there's a lot more involved to doing that. But if the house had originally been built with 32 inch or 34 inch, 36-inch doors, it would be in the hallways. It's a great point. The hallways don't have to be as narrow as they are. And actually, even better, good designers know how to build homes without hallways.
And are you seeing that? I don't know in the US, but other than the ADA Act that was passed, and my shame, I did a video on it. I can't give you the exact things, but it didn't go far enough, I guess, in hindsight, as of mandating housing. You see a lot in commercial, but even to throw a statistic out, I think we talked about it once before, it's been shown that uh, places of business that go all out in terms of accessibility. So that's button entry, curbs, wider doors, whatever. They have a net profit of 35% higher than the same store that exists elsewhere in the community that doesn't have those accessibility features. Not because there's a whole bunch of wheelchair users, but people subconsciously go to places that are easier, more convenient to get in and out of. So, to me, 35% net would be enough incentive for me to spend money to get my business up to a grade of standard for anyone with a disability.
That's such a great point. It's the feeling of being welcomed, the feeling of safety, the feeling of warmth, of just being able to get in and get out without worrying about things. And you're so right about that. And where ADA fell flat, unfortunately, it is only in the public spaces. So if you have an apartment building, and most people may not know this, if you have an apartment building, only the sales office is required to have any ADA, because that's the public's access spot. So the bathroom on the first floor where the lobby is will probably have the bars and the wider bathroom, so on. But all those apartments above there, none of them have to be. at all accessible whatsoever. And that it's an incredible blind eye to what was needed. Same thing true with housing is that, a lot of people would call Little D's and say, well, I want my home to be ADA. And I said, we can actually do 10 times better actually than that. And we can do it customized. We don't have to follow ADA rules at all because it doesn't apply to your home whatsoever. That's a public space issue. And it's good that it's there in the public spaces, but it doesn't go far enough. This is only in the United States. Now in Canada, of course, it's different rules again, but here in the United States, I should say, there in the United States as I'm in Spain.
What are some of the common accessibility issues you would see in homes? Like I think of general population, if you're able to get into a home to install, whether it's a grab bar, whether I'm sure you're seeing other things other than just the bathroom. I would turn it around on you in the field as what are some of the shortfalls that you would see in a lot of homes that people don't pay attention to?
Enemy number one would be the stairways. Having multiple stairways and split foyer homes. And if people aren't familiar with that, that basically means you either have to go up or down when you come in through the front door. You cannot enter straight into the house. So you have a short stairway up and a short stairway down. Probably the number one enemy of accessibility would be a split foyer home. The best homes that we've seen out there, of course, are the ranchers that are built on a single level. And you're right about the flooding issue, but there's so many things you can do to make an easy entrance into a house without flooding problems as well. But that said, you'd already touched on it, the narrow doorways and so on. The bathroom is probably enemy number one on that. Especially older homes, the bathrooms are tiny. The vanity and the toilet are really close together. It's hard to maneuver between them. The bathtubs had, they're bathtubs. They didn't have showers. So you would have this large, almost 2-foot step you have to get over in order to get into the shower. We actually installed something called tub cuts.
Talk about that.
Cut the side of the bathtub out, and it turned it into, end up with a 2.5-inch lip on it, and basically turn it into a shower. And the cool thing is it's reversible. So if you sold the house, you could put the piece that we took out back in and refinish.
Explain that once more, what the tub cut, what it is, how it operates, and what advantages there are.
It's a proprietary process. You can look it up, tubcut.com, and we can cut in fiberglass, acrylic, cast iron, and steel tubs, which is amazing.
Really?
It doesn't matter. Yeah, even steel and cast iron. We can cut those out, and you can do it in any kind of width. You could do it as little as 24 inches and as much as almost the entire width of the tub. And so it's customized that way. And when it's all done, it looks like it's been factory installed that way, which is amazing. So the finishing on it is so professionally done, and it looks so beautiful. And then you put in a shower curtain. You could use shower doors, but we always say shower curtains. And that gets to one of your questions is, so what do we see? Shower doors are also an enemy of accessibility. They're really dangerous. People just don't understand that. They look great in designer magazines, but they are, how many people have we seen that are hanging onto the knob of that shower door trying to get in and out, using it for support. And that's a piece of glass you're hanging onto. It's just so dangerous. So that's another one that we see. The tub cut really is a wonderful solution for access on there. Get rid of the shower door. The other thing, and this is something most people don't think about or have heard about, is the way your door opens into the bathroom.
Yes.
If it opens, into the bathroom, that is a significant hazard because, especially a small one, if you fall down or get wedged in someplace there, your loved one or EMTs cannot get access because a lot of times your feet will be against the door and they can't get in. The doors should always swing out of the bathrooms for accessibility. It's just, and speaking of doors, even better would be not to have that kind of a door, maybe a slider, a pocket door. That would be so much better because then you're very aware of this, it's so much easier to be able to do this than to have to move in and then grab it and close it again. And again, pocket doors are great because they're accessible to everyone and they feel great, and they don't take up any space and they're out of sight. So there's just a lot of nice things about it. So those are some of the things, this stay away from the slippery, so many of the people are putting things like big marble slabs and stuff on the floors, and you want to create a skating rink, go
Yeah.
ahead and do that. But you can do with small tile would be better, or use all the different kinds of substrates now. The LVT, the luxury vinyl planks, the even wood in some cases might work really well, or the engineered wood. There's so many things you can do that make the floor safer.
In the US, I know in Canada, there are grants for homeowners that want to do work to make the home accessible. And you can look at swagability.com and we can have those listed. We're trying to look into the US, but offhand, do you know of any funding that exists? I guess it would be state by state, but that would exist to help people, because they are expensive. Kitchens and bathrooms are one of the most costly things to try and get to an accessibility point. We've
Yeah.
come a long way, but there are still dollars that need to be spent.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. If you're going to do a full bathroom or full kitchen renovation, the two most expensive rooms of your home, and you're easily in the tens of thousands of dollars very quickly before you know it. And if the house has any significant structural issues or rot or things like that, then it just goes through the roof. In the United States, unfortunately, there really isn't a state. No, but you're absolutely right. State by state, there is. And for instance, in Maryland, there's something called the accessibility tax credit. So up to $5,000, if you spend up to $5,000, you get 50% of that back on your taxes. If you do accessibility, and it could be anything. It could be putting better knobs on the cabinets. It could be like you mentioned, like maybe lowering a counter and having a section of a counter that's lower so it's more accessible. Things like that. It could even be lighting, if you add extra lights in dark areas, or automatic lights, or smart technology, like you said. All of those things could qualify. And then there's the whole home program in Maryland too. So that's a case by case basis. A lot of these things, that's income based, whereas the tax credit is not income based, which makes it much easier. When it gets to income based, then you're into the nightmare of qualifying, and you're filling out all the paperwork to show what your income is. You got to prove it, because it's based on a distrust system. They don't trust you, and you need to prove that you need this, and that's unfortunate. And also, the money is very limited. So there's competition to get those funds. It's a haphazard slap together Band-Aid, and as I said, every state has a different set of rules.
Yes.
It's not the way to do it. It's not. What we should be doing is building homes from the get-go to be accessible or accessible ready.
That I believe would be a great way for me to look at it, whether it be tax. I don't know how you would do it, but to incentivize individuals to build thinking futuristic, adding accessible features to their home from the get-go, and then them saving or getting some sort of rebate for that, because I'm sure you would save it somewhere on the back end, whether that be in the healthcare industry where they're not taking care of people that are falling or whatever. And I just think the ADA did amazing things. I just think there needs to be people like you and I and others that need to make a little bit more noise to draw attention to the fact that a lot of problems can be solved. Look, if a store can make 35% more net just by being accessible, think about a world where housing has met not just wheelchairs, but met an accessibility standard of less injuries, less people trying to have to mortgage, less foreclosures, trying to make some of these payments.
Yeah, there's something called a social impact. This is something that that's a nonprofit speak. The social compact. And what that basically means is that if you can prove that doing something would save X number of dollars over the population, then it should be funded for that number of dollars. So if we can show that, let's say what we do to these homes, the fall rate is in half, and let's say that fall rate then saves $3 billion. Well, that's $3 billion you just carved out that can go back into helping other people modify their homes to prevent falls. So it's this wonderful circle of correct help. It requires very advanced thinking, and politics don't like it. Because it looks like what we're doing is taking money and giving it to do something, whereas in reality, you got to show, no, we're really saving this money. It's going to save people's lives. It's going to save money. And so the social compact is nonprofits, people who are in the industry understand it, but it's hard to get the politicians to understand it. And that's where we get stuck.
Before we continue, I want to take a moment and thank Podmatch for helping make this show possible. If you're looking for an easy way to find and connect and book podcast guests on your show, or vice versa, a host looking for a guest and a guest looking for a host, look no further than Podmatch. It's a platform I use to connect with amazing guests like Greg. If you're thinking of starting a podcast, I would highly recommend Podmatch. It would be your first move. You can join Podmatch easily by following the website joinpodmatch.com/swagability, joinpodmatch.com/swagability, and tell them Swag sent you to get yourself hooked up with a discount. Let's talk about for a few more minutes before we go, the ADUs. Define what an ADU is and how do they help when families plan for aging in place and for the future.
So it's another three-letter acronym, as we call them, TLAs in the government. TLA is three-letter acronym. Yeah, ADU and ADA. So the ADU is accessory dwelling unit. It is a way to convert a space in your home into another living unit. So an example is you could convert your garage into an apartment, your walkout basement into an apartment, or you could even build a small, tiny home or small home or tiny home in your backyard. And that
Well,
could be
granny suites, I think, here in
that's right. We
Canada.
call them granny flats, granny suites,
Granny
Fonzie flats for the people who love
Yes,
happy days.
right.
Fonzie flats on there. Caregiving or caretaking cottages is another one. That's a nice way to look at it.
Yes.
And other people just call them Airbnbs because it's a great place to rent. It's a great place to rent out without impinging upon your own personal space. But they are a remarkable tool. We talked about the savings and how to get grants and so on. ADUs in many ways can pay back over time a lot of the costs to convert. In many ways, the rent you didn't have to pay elsewhere, or rental income that you might need to stay where you want to live. If you're living in a 2,000, 3,000 square foot home, convert 800 to 1,000 square feet to a small apartment at $1,000, $2,000 a month income, and now you can pay your property taxes and you can get your medicines. So there's so many wonderful things about accessory. The other key thing is, this goes back to building new, is that very likely you can make that unit totally accessible. So maybe your home is hard to convert and make it accessible, but if you're starting fresh and converting, especially like a garage, which already has easy access from the outside, it has to, because you can't get a car in otherwise. But so it already has that, or a walkout basement a lot of times will have really great access as well. So that, if you're built on a hillside, you probably have a walkout basement. That's a great place to put an accessory dwelling unit. And there's all kinds of ways to do it. It doesn't have to be a full-fledged kitchen. And, you can actually put, we call mini kitchens, which might have a hot plate and a small refrigerator. It doesn't necessarily need a dishwasher. A lot of people, especially if it's only one or two people living there, just wash the dishes by hand. It's very easy to do, and a very easy stackable, or these combination laundry machines that does the washing and the drying in the same machine. Yeah. So there's lots of things you can do to make it accessible, affordable, really cute space. I mean, I'm talking to you from right now in an ADU in Spain. This is a one bedroom, one bath accessory dwelling unit in Spain. They're very popular in Spain because families tend to stick together over generations.
Yes.
And it'll intergenerational living without being on top of each other.
In your short time there, have you noticed a difference in terms of equipment? I know for a fact Europe is much more advanced than US and Canada when it comes to power chairs, a lot of assistive technology. Europe is quite quicker, more advanced. In your short time there, what has been your assessment of accessibility and their desire for it?
It's such a mixed bag. You're right about the advance on technology, but the homes here are, of course, in many cases, much older. I mean, we're now looking at some houses that are hundreds of years old, but that means incredibly narrow, stairways that are almost like ladders and stuff like that. But even the more modern ones, frankly, have not had accessibility built into them. I'm kind of shocked by it. The showers are actually some of the worst in terms of slip and fall dangers that I've seen. And I was very shocked about that. We have lots of thresholds throughout houses, lots of change and elevations. You'll be in a living room, and then you have to step up to get to the kitchen,
Yes.
and without any real thought about that. And so I'm surprised by it. I saw a woman bringing her mom down from an apartment, and she carried her. She was a wheelchair, but she had to carry her down. She actually had a weightlifting belt on with a back brace. She had
Wow.
actually built up these amazing muscles. She was so strong, and she carried her down. And I saw her literally just lift her and put her into the car. And I'd never seen that before. The woman was built like a brick. I mean, to be able to do this.
Yeah.
But I was thinking she shouldn't have to do that, and her
No.
mom shouldn't have to be put through that. And so that's interesting because there's some advances here, but I'm actually seeing Spain as being behind Canada and the United States in terms of overall home accessibility.
Wow.
What's going on in Spain? I
Yeah.
don't get it.
I guess you'll figure it out, I guess, the longer you're there. I wanted to go back to that with your Grab Bar Association. We'll close out with that. But I'm thinking right now about families that are on a budget. They know there's areas that they're going to need accessible and things like that. What are some cost-effective, simple, most common, effective changes that can improve safety at a home before a big overhaul is done?
Some of the simplest things are night lights. Just plug in some night lights. A lot of them now are motion sensor, and they're also adjustable for lightness. So you don't have to have them come on really bright, and they don't have to be on all the time. And you can plug them in anywhere, and they cost a couple dollars. And you can just plug them in outlets everywhere. That's a huge, nice thing to have, because if you're getting up in the middle of the night, to have a lighted walkway, it's just so important. We talked about the bathroom. The grab bars, definitely put a grab bar in the shower, at least one, ideally three, is what we like to see, a minimum of three, one along the long wall, one next to the shower controls, and one at the entrance. So they get in and out. So you have something to hang on to as you get in and out. So three is ideal. That's a simple,
right?
Properly installed by, hopefully soon, certified grab bar installers through the Grab Bar Association that we're starting. That's key. And another one is get rid of those glass doors, put up a shower curtain. It's so much safer on doing that. And that's a removal, so it doesn't cost a lot other than patching the little holes on the side. Get rid of the rugs that might be slippery and barrier, and make sure that they have no slip backings on them. That's another one. Make sure that the tub and the shower itself has no slip strips in it. That's a very easy thing you can add yourself. Use some alcohol, clean the soap scum off and so on, and get those down there. Very, very simple things to do. And that's a good place to start. And then just start looking around your home, and think about it differently. Think about it. What if I was doing this with my eyes closed in the middle of the night? How dangerous would it be? What would happen? Another thing is you can hire a physical therapist, a PT, OT, occupational therapist, to do a walkthrough. And they charge, between $125, $200, depending on what's going to, and they can write up a nice report.
You're stealing my business. Stealing my accessibility audit business, but you're right.
Right, that's it. And that's it, is that there are accessibility audit businesses like that. They can even do it virtually. That you don't have to even be there in person, and you could just walk through with your cell phone, and they can look at it with you and tell you what they're seeing. That's big. I can't tell you how many homes don't have handrails on those first two steps up to the front door, for instance. And not only should you have one handrail, you really should have two on either side, because you may have a bag of groceries, or you may need to be helping somebody else, and you can be using the handrail as you help them. So those are things that are fairly easy, and everything I just mentioned you could probably do for under a couple $1,000s.
And I see people right now rolling their eyes at the grab bars or the handles, but you roll your eyes now, but it only takes one slip, either you or a family member or a loved one, and you'll realize that, you know what, that extra little cost or the aesthetics of it really don't matter in the grand scheme of life when you're dealing with really the safety, because the stats don't lie. There are more people injured in their own homes than there are behind the wheel of a car. And if you're not one of them, that's great, but let's not make you a statistic. And you made a good point about, I just got thinking two things for SwagAbility. When it comes to government programs, you can go to our website, and we have started a list where you can find and apply for applications, whether it be grant money or whatever, in your province, right now, but soon to be in your state. Secondly, Greg, I think it'd be a great video just to do a roll through my house, just to show what we have done and taking a ranch level house, but turning it into a complete accessible home, especially in the bathroom, but all the little things that are huge if something were to uh, happen to you. So the Grab Bar Association, tell us what can people do to support this work? Where can we find the information about it? Is there a website? How can we make more noise about this so it becomes a reality as opposed to a podcast conversation?
For the noise, we don't have a website yet. We're about ready to launch one very soon.
Great.
But for the noise, what you can make is what our mantra is. Again, a grab bar in every shower, a handrail in every step, no exceptions. Just to say that, no exceptions. And so if someone says, I really don't want a handrail there, or I don't like the way the grab bar looks, close your eyes, pretend you have soap in your eyes and stand on one foot and see how long you last in the shower before you go down. It's going to happen. And so let's not make that an accident that let's make it an accident you can avoid. So get those in there. The association is got three basic stools on here, of legs of the stool. And one is the training and certification of installers. And primarily these are going to be folks that have been handyman who want to specialize in this work. And I think it's a wonderful place for them to move into. We did handyman work too, and there's only so many times that you can go in and say, Mrs. Smith wants her wall painted, a special purple. And you go home at night and say, what did I really accomplish? I just painted a house purple, big deal. But if you go home and say, I just put in 3 grab bars, and that house is so much safer for Mrs. Smith now, that I feel really good about that. And not only that, now I can do additional handyman work for her. So the handyman becoming certified and putting in the grab bars is going to be key. The other piece is the advocacy. So is being loud as an organization, loud to the legislators and say this can no longer stand because we're going to all fall now. That we don't require grab bars in every single new build, every single remodel, because there are rules. If you remodel a house, there are certain things you have, like smoke detectors. If you remodel a percentage of a house, you are required to put in LinkedIn smoke detectors that talk to each other, for instance. So why don't we do that with grab bars?
And you're right, it's the entryway, right? If it starts the thinking processes, why are we doing that? And look what it saved on the back end. Well, how much more so when we talk about light switches or practical widths for hallways without trying to change people's aesthetics so they hate their home, but saying this is practical. This makes sense. The same way seatbelts were probably why would we want to put that in our vehicle? But on the back end, look at the number of lives. You don't hear the name Ralph Nader too much, but that man's legacy is that the millions of lives that he saved because of a aha moment.
So true. That's so true. And the thing about grab bars and handrails, they can be beautiful. They can be accessories that actually make your space look better, not worse. That's important for folks to know. There's so many things that that when you do accessibility correct with design elements built into it, it actually enhances the space. It feels good. It feels safe, and it looks great. And we call it jewelry for the bathroom, and beach entry showers. So that to change that mindset. This isn't about hospitals and disabilities and just being older. It's about making it a nice place for all of us.
And it works. I think anyone that works in the realm and does come up with new assistive technologies, like assistive technologies in a piece of clothing, you don't know, but my shirt's all magnets. They're a beautiful garment, but I can now have my independence putting a shirt on because they're very strong magnets that hold together that still look like buttons. I mean, I use that as a silly example, but it is. And I had a Maura Horton, wonderful story, but it's not Velcro, right? It could be, but it's not. And I think a lot of these things that are accessible features, they're not what people think that my home is going to look like this, or it's going to create an eyesore here. You're right. It's accessorizing. The people that are building the technology aren't stupid to think, let's build something that's green and is going to stand out in the middle of the green thumb that sticks out in the middle of something that's beautiful. There's a lot of common sense that has gone into assistive technology.
The design part is not adding more features or pieces to it to make it complex and hard. It's the idea, the exact opposite, is making it simple and elegant and beautiful. Apple, of course, was a really great example of how they did that. They went from, remember the remote controls used to have something like 40 or 50 buttons on them? Because they were designed by engineers, electrical engineers and mechanical engineers. And they said, well, this is what you need for this, and this is what you need for that, without any thought of the vast majority of how people are going to use that remote control. And then Apple comes along and here's a remote control with just one button on it. That's it. And it's a little rotating button. Elegant, beautiful, accessible, and gorgeous. It's just a gorgeous look. It's actually a little piece of artwork. And that's a great example of how it can be done. Your magnetic buttons are such a great example versus the horrible sound of Velcro tearing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We will let you know hopefully when the website drops, we'll put this in the show notes. And anything else that you want to share, Greg, before we sign off, that people can either take action or find your products or things like that are available?
Well, I love the fact that you have products on your website. So those are we call ourselves little deeds when we got started because of these little things that can make a big difference. That's the idea. So that the word of advice on here is think about the little things that can make a big difference in your home and get those things out of the way first. I think decluttering is important. Putting the grab bars in, making your home look and feel great, and it will add to its safety as well.
I think it's smart because I know a lot of people think, well, at the end of life, it's institutionalized. Well, those places have a time and a place and a purpose, but who doesn't want to stay in their family dwelling as long as they can? And when it comes to the end of life and you have other people making decisions for you, why not make those decisions easier now than later on down the road where you might not be in as great as a shape to be able to make those assessments? I think it's as smart as doing a will is as smart as making your house as accessible as it can be for long term.
Well, you're helping others by, when you make your home accessible, by making it easier to care for you as well. That's something that a lot of folks don't understand, is that grab bars aren't just for the person there. It can also be for the caregiver. It gives them something else to hang on to while they're helping you, assisting you with your needs. So it's sort of a selfless thing to do. It's making it easier for everyone in your home, including others that help you.
That's a great point. Friends, thank you for watching. Greg, thank you for hanging out. And what time is it where you are right now?
It's 8:20 p.m. in Spain. Beautiful Spanish evening, about 50 degrees. It's gorgeous here.
I won't tell you what we are here in Eastern Canada, but let's say I'm jealous. But friends, thanks for tuning in to the SwagAbility Show. We want to remind you that you can go to swagability.com to check out a little bit more about my wife and I. And the reason why SwagAbility exists truly is to see you to thrive wherever life finds you. If you've been through trauma, disability, or you're a caregiver that's going through burnout, or a veteran, we want to come alongside you. And our scars, we want to make sure we can walk that road with you. You could do us the greatest honor of all, and that'd be subscribe to our YouTube channel at SwagAbility Inc. and give us a like. That certainly helps the algorithm. Greg, amazing to hear from you. Great insight. I look forward to